Rebecca stood before the temple gates in Bangkok, clutching the strap of her bag, the air thick with incense and something else, an intangible promise. Her life had drifted into strange waters since her husband's death, a man of elegance, all sharp edges and clean lines, a lawyer who had sculpted the world with words. In their marriage, she'd been both dazzled by his success and contained by it. And then, suddenly, she wasn't contained anymore. He was gone. A car crash that left her with a bank account heavy with unused purpose and a void she couldn't fill. She needed something, and it was neither wealth nor comfort. So when she'd heard whispers of a place in Bangkok where memories resurfaced, she listened. As she stepped through the threshold, she felt the shift. The noise of the city receded behind her, replaced by the solemn hush of the temple grounds. She slipped off her shoes, feeling the cool stone underfoot, grounding her, reminding her of rituals she'd once cherished. A monk met her with a nod, his expression serene, as if he had been expecting her for centuries. With a silent gesture, he led her down narrow halls lit by soft, golden lights until they arrived at the chamber, a sensory deprivation room both ordinary and sacred. Here, time would turn in on itself. Rebecca changed into the gown offered, a garment so light it was almost like wearing nothing at all. She lay back in the water of the tank, her limbs floating, her senses wrapped in the soundless, sightless void. At first, there was only a low hum from her own heartbeat, syncing with the distant chimes and faint whispers outside. And then, the world melted away. She blinked and found herself somewhere else. It was a sudden, jarring transition. The first sensation was smell, a sharp, unpleasant odor. She tried to lift her hands, but they felt small, soft, and useless. Her vision was hazy, blurred, but she sensed a figure looming over her, adjusting her, fussing with something at her waist. Then it hit her. She was a baby. Not a dream, not a memory, but an immersion. She couldn't speak, couldn't understand the words being murmured above her, yet the feeling was visceral. Discomfort, vulnerability, and the overwhelming urge to cry out, yet with no way to do so. The embarrassment was strange, almost comical, but there was a primal sense of helplessness too. The scent faded, and she was back, blinking in the dim light of the temple, her body still weightless in the water. The monk's gentle gaze greeted her as he offered her a glass of water, his words soft but affirming. "Tomorrow," he said simply, nodding at her, as though he saw in her eyes the vast landscape she had just traversed. She rose, body slightly unsteady, feeling as though she had touched something raw, elemental. But she would return. Of that, she was certain. That night, strange things began to happen. Back at her hotel, she found herself entranced by children's cartoons on the television. The bright colors, the simple humor, all of it left her giggling, a sound that felt oddly unfamiliar to her own ears. She ordered room service, a meal both bland and comforting, plain noodles and a soft, creamy pudding. Each bite took her further from herself, further into a childlike ease that felt new but also unsettling. Bangkok's nightlife, with its bars and dazzling lights, held no allure. Instead, she felt a weariness creep in, a deep-seated fatigue that sent her early to bed, her mind filled with a strange sense of anticipation for the next session. The childlike simplicity was intoxicating, a soothing retreat from the sharp angles of adulthood. The second day began just as before, with the gentle murmur of the temple bells, the silence thick around her as she prepared to enter the tank. She settled into the water, breathing deeply, feeling her mind detach once more from the present, sinking back into that strange, timeless place. Then she was 12. She knew it immediately, in the same way one knows a long-forgotten scent or song. She stood in a dim room, the glow of a nightlight casting shadows across familiar walls, a bed beneath her as uncomfortable as the situation she found herself in. She had wet the bed. The old shame returned like an unwelcome friend, clinging to her, reminding her of the dozen times it had happened before her mother had finally made her a quiet promise to just wait it out. Her mother's sigh echoed faintly, and Rebecca felt the sting of mortification all over again, as though she were trapped in that moment, reliving every ounce of awkwardness. They'd gone to a doctor who muttered something about waiting until she outgrew it. Then they'd walked down supermarket aisles, picking up bright, colorful packages of night guards, padding that made her feel 10 times worse. It had been so long ago. She hadn't thought about it in years, yet here it was, raw and real, sinking its claws into her. The shame was a thick cloud, and then it faded, and she was once again in the cool, calm waters of the deprivation tank, her adult self fully restored, yet feeling oddly stripped of defenses. Back at the hotel, she noticed a peculiar change. Her appetite had shifted again. She picked at her food like a child, leaving the spicy, foreign dishes untouched, drawn only to the simplest things. As she lay in bed, she dreamed of nothing but blankness, a comforting void. The next morning, she woke to a strange dampness in the sheets. Mortification crept over her, though she reassured herself it was a fluke, nothing more than a strange side effect of the meditation. Still, the unease lingered, prickling at the back of her mind as she washed the sheets and prepared herself for the next session. The third meditation was different. She could feel it as soon as she lay back in the water. It was as if the tank itself were pulling her, faster, deeper, the weight of her thoughts sinking like stones. And then, silence. When she opened her eyes, she couldn't see much of anything. A soft warmth surrounded her, almost like a cocoon. She couldn't move, couldn't hear, only sensed a dull, gentle rhythm. A heartbeat. A slow, steady drum that she understood instinctively was not her own. She felt weightless, floating in a way that was comforting, yet intensely strange. As the darkness around her pulsed in sync with the heartbeat, she realized she was not yet born. She was cradled in the womb, sensing life only in fragments, feeling connected to the world in a way she had never experienced before. And then, she woke, gasping, disoriented, the world of the temple rushing back. The monk stood nearby, calm and knowing. His gaze seemed to hold answers, but he offered none, simply gestured toward the door. Back at her hotel, Rebecca tried to piece together the experience. She could still feel traces of it, the sense of childlike wonder, the raw vulnerability, and something even deeper, something untouched. For the first time in years, she felt she was beginning to understand herself, like she had peeled back layers of memory to something pure, something that pulsed quietly beneath everything else. That night, she felt herself drifting off with a peculiar excitement, an eagerness for what tomorrow might bring. As she settled into sleep, the rhythm of that distant heartbeat lingered, a reminder of her journey inward, into a realm that was strange, terrifying, and more enlightening than she could have imagined. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Mommy Sarah's Story Time. If you enjoyed the stories, please support the channel by liking and subscribing. Remember, my channel is not monetized, and I write most of the content myself. On occasions when I don't, it's sourced through emails from trusted contacts. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you're able to, consider making a donation to support our channel. Your support means a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to sharing more stories with you.